Hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Roma and Diana. Today is a very exciting day because we are going to be doing a very special episode. We will be traveling all the way over to Singapore. I've always wanted to visit this country, so I'm very excited for this episode. But before we get started, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. As usual, our episode begins with Roma and Diana waking up at their home in the morning. It's a beautiful day out, and they decide to head downstairs for breakfast. While eating, Diana asks her parents if she and Roma can go play outside, but they tell them that they aren't allowed to because they have something very important to tell them. Roma and Diana look at each other and sigh, knowing that whatever it is, it won't be good news. Their parents sit them down at the table and tell them that they will be going away on a vacation to Singapore for 3 weeks. Roma and Diana both look at each other in disbelief. They really want to go, but they also really want to stay at home with their robot vacuum, Turbo. But there is no way they could convince their parents to stay home, so they packed their bags and headed off to the airport. When they arrive, they see that the plane has already arrived and they quickly run towards it. When they finally make it, they see that it is a small private plane, and they are shocked. They board the plane, and they take off. The flight was very boring and long, so Diana fell asleep. When she woke up, they had already landed and she heard someone say welcome to Singapore. As soon as the doors opened, a hot and humid breeze hit them. They got off the plane and went through immigration. Diana ran ahead of everyone while holding her stuffed animal, Binky, until she bumped right into a staff member. She quickly apologized and continued walking. Then they met up with their tour guide named Lee. He was a very nice man who would be taking care of them throughout their trip. Lee led them to their hotel and as they approached, Diana gasped. It was beautiful. The lobby was decorated with flowers and plants everywhere. There was even a huge fountain. Diana couldn't wait to see what else Singapore had to offer. After checking in, they decided to head out and explore. They walked around until they saw a huge building in the distance with lights flashing all over it. They got closer and realized that it was an aquarium. It was massive and Diana immediately begged her parents to go inside. Of course they said yes, and they bought tickets. When they entered, they were stunned by the size of it. There were all kinds of fish everywhere and they were amazed by how clear the water was. Then they saw a huge shark swimming past them and they screamed. Diana got scared and hid behind her mother, but then a kind woman came over and gave her a fish-shaped balloon. She calmed down and smiled. Then they made their way over to the jellyfish exhibit. They were floating past them and it almost looked like they were flying. They were very graceful and elegant and Diana loved it. Then they walked past the seahorses and stopped to watch a diver feeding the fish. He was throwing in food and the fish were going crazy. The best part of the aquarium was when they saw the giant whale shark. It was enormous and Diana had never seen anything like it before. It was so cool. After spending hours at the aquarium, they headed back to the hotel for dinner. They were tired from all the walking and just wanted to relax. After dinner, they headed to bed. Diana was very sad that the first day was already over. She couldn't wait for the next day and everything they would get to do. The next morning, Diana woke up bright and early and headed downstairs for breakfast. It was a buffet style and there was so much to choose from. Diana ate as much as she could, then headed upstairs to get changed. They were going on a boat ride today and she couldn't wait. After arriving at the dock, they boarded the boat and headed into the water. The boat ride was very relaxing and enjoyable. They passed by huge skyscrapers and luxurious homes. Diana leaned against her father and closed her eyes. Suddenly, she felt something wet on her hand and she opened her eyes. She realized that it was raining and quickly moved her head. Right then and there, she heard thunder and saw lightning strike. She instantly panicked. She hated thunderstorms, and the last time one had occurred, she had been struck by lightning and turned into a cat. This wasn't good. Just then, the rain started coming down harder and the wind began picking up. Soon, the sky was dark gray and the ocean was rough. Diana was shaking. Her mother noticed and asked her what was wrong. She told her about her fear of thunderstorms, and her mother reassured her that they would be okay. Just then, the sky flashed again and the boat suddenly rocked. Diana screamed and closed her eyes tight. When she opened them, she saw that they were surrounded by tall trees, and the boat had crashed into them. They unhooked the safety harnesses and quickly jumped off. Diana grabbed onto her father and followed him through the jungle. She could hear the sound of the storm behind them, and she knew they needed to get out of there as fast as possible. They walked for a while until they finally made it out. They sat down on a log and caught their breath. Diana was exhausted and hungry, but most of all, she was relieved to be safe. Later that evening, after telling their parents about what happened, they decided to order pizza. Diana didn't feel like eating anymore. She couldn't believe how scary it was, and she didn't want to remember it by eating delicious pizza. Her family understood and just gave her some extra love. The next day, they decided to go to Universal Studios. Diana was very happy because she loves watching movies. On the way over, they stopped by a store called Mustafa. It was open 24 hours and sold pretty much everything imaginable. Diana wanted to buy a toy dinosaur, but her parents said that they could only buy it if they found something for Dad. They split up and Diana searched for the perfect gift. She wandered around until she found a very nice-looking perfume and bought it for her father. When they reunited, they headed over to Universal Studios. When they arrived, they were amazed by the colorful and exciting decorations. They went straight to the rides and played all the games. Diana won a giant panda for a prize. They took lots of pictures together and laughed a lot. At the end of the day, they were exhausted and went back to the hotel. Diana slept very soundly that night. The next day, they headed over to Gardens by the Bay. It was a huge park with different kinds of plants and flowers. They walked along the path and admired the beauty all around them. They saw a huge waterfall and a pond full of colorful koi fish. Diana threw in some fish food and watched as they swam towards her. She had so much fun. After leaving the park, they headed back to the hotel. They decided to order Chinese food for dinner and watch TV. The next morning, they headed over to Sentosa Island. It was a beautiful island with sandy beaches and crystal clear water. They rented a cabana and spent the whole day swimming. Diana built sandcastles and collected seashells. They stayed there until sunset and headed back to the hotel. Diana was sad that it was already the last day of their trip. She didn't want to go home. That morning, they woke up bright and early to catch their flight. Diana took one last look around her room and headed downstairs. She ate breakfast and waited for their car to arrive. When it did, they all piled in and headed to the airport. At the airport, they checked in and headed through security. Diana kept checking her phone to see how much time they had left. They still had plenty of time, so she decided to go to the toy store. She picked out a few toys and headed to the checkout. When she turned around, she saw that her parents were nowhere to be found. She quickly started searching for them, but they were nowhere to be seen. She was getting very worried and scared. What if she never saw her parents again? She couldn't imagine her life without them. She sat down on a bench and started crying. Suddenly, she felt a hand on her shoulder and she jumped. When she turned around, she saw a kind woman with a familiar face. It was the woman from the aquarium who gave her the balloon. Diana quickly explained what happened, and the woman said that she would help her find them. She took her to a staff member and explained the situation. They quickly got on the intercom and announced that 2 adults were needed at the toy store. A few moments later, her parents rushed over and hugged her tightly. She was so happy to see them. They apologized for leaving her alone and promised it would never happen again. They boarded their plane and headed home. As they flew over the clouds, Diana thought about all the amazing things she had done during her trip. She made new friends, saw beautiful sights, and experienced new things. She couldn't wait to tell her friends all about it. When they arrived home, they quickly unpacked and headed to bed. Diana dreamed about her amazing vacation and couldn't wait to go back. The next morning, Diana woke up and headed downstairs for breakfast. She told her parents about her dream, and they all started talking about their favorite parts of the trip. Diana missed her stuffed animals, but she was glad to be home. She missed her bed and her robot vacuum, Turbo. She was glad to be back. Well, everybody, that's gonna be it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, please let me know what your favorite part of the video was in the comments below. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I'll see you next time.